My name is Tim Flach. I'm here shooting my studio. We're with Wex and Canon today, doing a project on birds. My book really is inspired by the 19th century bird illustrators like Gould and Audubon, who did these amazing illustrations. And I wanted to do that, in a sense, be inspired from that legacy and approach birds as a subject, with lots of portraits, flying shots, abstracts. But in the organization of them, I wanted to also show how birds, they were dinosaurs that emerged into the flightless birds, and as they move through the book, they go into the more specialized species, like the hummingbird, and finally, of course, the poultry, which were shaped by us. The birds we have today are on the birds of prey. We have a barn owl, a great grey owl, and the black-chested buzzard eagle. And then we also have parrots, the blue-throated, the scarlet macaw, and the military macaw. For much of my project, I've been using Canon, and more recently, the R5, which has been brilliant because it allows me to really to be able to track animals, because it has animal eye tracking.
One of the things that a lot of people find quite difficult about Tim's work is that they think the lighting is very complicated and it always seems very inaccessible. But if you actually break it down into the small parts, it's actually really quite easy to recreate or to set up in a very similar way. So it's all about logic, really. But first of all, we're starting with lighting the backdrop itself. So we've got two honeycombed reflectors here, creating the circular grad in the middle there. And then in order to get the outer edges of it to create a nice gradient and not to go too dark, we then have a second set of reflectors, one with a barn door and one with some black wrap, to do the fill around the outside. And so that's already 4 of the lights taken care of. To light the bird is the second subject. So we've got a perch here where we'll light to make sure it's all pointing in the right direction. The key light up here is, this is a satellite evolution. So all of the lights are by broncolor, but Tim always chooses to use this one for animals because of its spectral light. It's quite a hard light. We've just taken the edge off with a quarter diffusion, and that gives a really nice texture on the feathers. The next light here from above, when you're lighting birds especially, they're always lit from the sun, and we want to make sure that the feathers are represented in the way that they were supposed to be, with the light above and the sun coming down onto them. So all of these create almost a bank of light, some from above and then the key light from over there. The last thing we've got here is a strip light, which just gives a nice little edge to the bird on the shadow side. And the final thing that a lot of people don't necessarily use or maybe don't understand is a ring light, which is just down here. And what that does is it actually etches into the shadows a little bit and gives you that little bit of a little bit more data, where you might get harsh shadows. Suddenly you have some data that you can then play with in post. If you want to go darker, you can, but you have the data that you need to go lighter. So I think all that taken into consideration, there's about 4 or 5 lights on the back, and there's only really 3 or 4 lights on the front. And if you break it down slowly, it's a lot more sensible.
With respect to settings and my camera, with the kind of shoot like we're doing here, where we're doing birds sort of flying across set, and sometimes you can't precisely focus, I'm tending to close the lens down quite a lot, f16, f18. When it comes to the speeds, I'm also working on quite high ISOs because the camera can do it, and I want to keep my flash settings low so that they're shooting really fast. In fact, 10,000ths of a second. And if you're really technical, they call it T0.1, which means all the exposure happens within the 10,000ths of a second. And in terms of, so that's the ISO's about 400 to 650 today. I've set it. I think that's pretty much everything. It's 160th, but that's only to do with making sure that the flash doesn't cause the curtain to obscure the shot. So we keep within, I think you can go to 200. That's really it, really. I've got a model on set, which is a barn owl called Alfie. And interesting enough, actually, it's one of our endemic species here. And what's amazing about them is actually they make no sound when they fly. They've got this nanotechnology that makes them quiet. But what I'm hoping to get from this shot is something that's not so much what a birder might do by photographing in the wild, but get that kind of subtle, more herodic kind of feel, a symbolic kind of picture of a bird, because what I'm interested in is the sort of getting across the idea of almost the spirit, the character, and the personality of the animal. Ready when you are. He's looking the other way now, isn't he? My next model is a black-chested buzzard eagle. And what I want to do here, apart from it's a beautiful looking bird, so I probably would want to do a portrait, but I want to take the opportunity to really take pictures of flying, because one thing about photography it does brilliantly is fragment that moment of time, almost extend our experience. With the animal eye tracking technology, this has become, it's transforming really, because now I can literally get a lock on the eye, and then as it flies through the frame, it holds the focus. It's quite incredible. With the black-chested buzzard eagle, one of the things we've got practically, it's quite a big bird. It's actually 5-foot wingspan, and my colorama is only 9 foot. So we decided that strategically, what we'll probably do is take him from the corner and at a slight angle. When I'm doing flying shots, they're quite random in a way. When I was doing hummingbirds, I think we ended up with about 4,000 frames, because invariably my depth of field was very small. With the animal eye tracking technology, I'm hoping to get more useful frames. But the one thing that we're trying to do is get an angle where we can get the bird in. But there's a lot of randomness, this is what I'm trying to say. That's part I find quite interesting. The portrait's quite controlled, but the shot with it flying opens up that kind of random shot where something happens, a bending of a feather or an angle that just looks cool. When I'm working with animals, one of the things I'm always looking for is patterns and sequences. The one thing you don't want to do is overthink it or rationalize it. Sometimes the really thing to do is let things reveal themselves. That what you find exciting can be more rewarding for other people. So a lot of this is about seeing what reveals itself and go, ooh, that works. And now let's track back and realize that as a picture. So at this moment, we've got the very last sequence as we're going off the frame here, as he's banking it to land on the person's on Ross's hand, or glove to be more precise. He's banking and you start getting this lovely framing shape. So all we're going to do now is track the set back, get Ross to stand a metre or so further back, and hopefully we'll be in the sweet spot. That's the theory. But he's quite small in the frame because we've actually I think what's really interesting about this is with these high-speed shots, you start seeing the bending of the feathers. Yeah. And I think that is quite rewarding. I was really mindful with this one because I wanted a certain background that actually I was probably going to have to accept that I might have to do a plate later to extend the canvas because my 9-foot colorama with a wingspan of 5 foot is a bit much. But what we're looking for is when the bird starts banking as it comes in, it does this, puts the brakes on essentially, and it starts presenting this wonderful shape of the wings. And at the moment, it's literally a chant, at the moment it's just numbers. So this time the wings are more outstretched and I'm looking for something that's a bit more heraldic with the wings higher. And that's really what I'm chasing at the moment. It is a bit random, believe it or not, for all the control and attempts to have things controlled. There's a randomness to it. It's a numbers, but we know this bird will fly quite a few times because it's actively worked, and thereby I feel that the odds are on our side. Whenever I'm doing this work, particularly with animals, I suppose the old saying goes, the old thing that, you shouldn't work with animals and children because of this uncertainty. But somehow for me, that's the ingredient that makes it exciting, that idea that things sort of happen. So I got this shot initially and was chasing this idea of the wings up. But then now I look at this sort of shape. It's actually got something very clean and graphic about it. Again, it looks like it's almost a symbolic shape. And I recognize that when I'm working in the studio like this, it's probably more interesting to go for that symbolism than perhaps what you might see as more photographing a bird in the wild. And that often what I'm trying to do is get that sense of character, personality, or almost symbolic level of meaning out of the pictures. So we've gone from the, I'd say, fairly monochromatic raptors, which are the birds of prey, to the extreme opposite now. Now we're on to the really colourful. We've got a blue-throated macaw here, which in the wild is critically endangered. But in captivity, we're lucky to have one here. And so this is what I want to do is get that intimacy, which also the birds themselves are much more comfortable with me approaching at a really short distance. Maybe not, actually, in this case. Now my model has returned, you have, haven't you? With the birds of prey, what I was doing in a sense was fragmenting moment of time, catching that flight. And what photography does, which I think is really amazing as a medium, is it extends our understanding of our experiences. So you can see the bending of a feather fragmented in a moment of 10,000ths of a second, say. Here you can have the intimacy of a detail that you can't observe because the bird moves so fast, but you can then examine, in the case of this model, the bubbles around the eye, details that you just would be denied because of our own vision. And that's what I think is really amazing, is that you, as I say, extend your experience of a subject. And what I like to do with my work with animals is to, in a sense, show things that fascinate me, and also hopefully they also find it fascinating. And this ability to, in a sense, if nothing is more than that you are in front of a subject with a piece of glass, and you are showing something that, because of the luxury of being able to find that particular bird, or that particular detail, or that chance moment. That's right. It's not that I'm always necessarily trying to get the same shot, but there's always these patterns, and whether it's a dog, a horse, or many other animals jumping, they're generally a tuck, a sort of thing, and then a stride out, and sometimes the legs look like a sort of dragging bunny rabbit legs. In the same way, the birds, there's always that sort of point in the movement of the wings, which is actually quite predictable and shares commonality with different species. And so after a while, you see those patterns. We've just finished a number of sort of detail shots of the birds. Now I think it's time to have them flying. So we have our new model, Aurora here, a scarlet macaw. I'm going to attempt to try and feed this one and see if I don't get attacked. Wow, very nice to me. So yeah, we better see if the model's going to perform. Well, if I had, I suppose, tips, it would be slight bias to my own way of working. But I think one would be intimacy, connection with your subject, evoking empathy, maybe through gaze from the characteristics of your subject. So that would definitely, so it would be connection, intimacy, and also just a way of looking at something that just makes you rethink the subject again, that is just not quite what you might expect. Thank you for everyone who's been watching, and also to Wex and Canon. I'd like to just say my book will be coming out on October the 14th, and called Birds, published by Abrahams. It's really, for me, it's really exciting to share this with everybody, and I hope people enjoy it.